Welcome to our new FIDIC Red Book tutorial. Today we are covering Part 2 of Site Preparation Works, which is the pricing schedule with the contract price breakdown and unit prices. Please watch to the end and see how you can get your free download version of the file and infographic slides from this video. Please subscribe and enjoy.
Welcome to a brand new deep dive. And today we are looking at something that it honestly dictates the reality of the physical world around you.
Yeah, it really does.
Because before a single brick is laid on a mega project, the entire future of that site is already locked in.
Right, every drop of sweat, every crane movement, it's all mapped out.
Exactly. And you might walk past a massive construction zone and, just see total chaos.
Dust everywhere.
Yeah, dust, scaffolding reaching up into the sky, just an army of workers in high-vis vests.
It looks completely random from the outside.
Right. But beneath that physical reality is this invisible architecture that holds the entire endeavor together.
Which is exactly what we're looking at today, the literal DNA of how our built environment comes into existence.
Because long before the heavy machinery rolls in, there's this hyper-specific set of rules. Rules that dictate the financial reality of every single action on that ground.
And we are unpacking one of those documents today, specifically a highly detailed construction contract template.
Document number S1.1. The RB17 pricing schedule for site preparation.
Sounds thrilling, right?
I know. On a surface, a bill of quantities sounds like literally the driest administrative paperwork imaginable.
It's just spreadsheets and bullet points.
Spreadsheets, bullet points, and a whole lot of euro symbols. But the mission of our deep dive today is to look past all that formatting.
Yeah, to translate that ink into the actual story.
Right, the story of risk, human labor, and the completely ruthless financial strategy required to pull off a mega project.
Because the overarching theme of a document like this, and you see it right from page 1, is this desperate attempt to force absolute mathematical certainty onto an environment that is, by definition, unpredictable.
Because the Earth itself is unpredictable.
Exactly. The weather changes, supply chains fracture, things go wrong.
But this pricing schedule basically creates a rigid financial boundary around all of that chaos.
It has to, or the project goes bankrupt before it starts.
Okay, let's unpack this foundational structure. Because to understand how you price a mega project, you have to look at how that chaos is split into distinct buckets.
Right. The contract divides the overall price tag into two main categories.
And those are direct works and indirect costs, both calculated in euros, by the way.
Yes, and the rules governing these two buckets are completely opposed to each other.
Which is fascinating. So tell me about the direct works first.
Well, the direct works represent the actual physical manipulation of the site. The phrase the contract uses over and over here is remeasurable.
Remeasurable, meaning it can change.
Exactly. If we look at the specific examples in the text, you see site clearance, and that is measured precisely in square meters.
Okay.
Then you have earthworks, like, say, excavating common material versus unsuitable material.
Which I assume is measured by volume.
Right, in cubic meters.
Yeah.
And then temporary fencing is measured in linear meters. So the unit of measurement shifts based on the physical nature of the task.
So if I'm trying to wrap my head around the financial mechanics here, it's actually remarkably similar to throwing a massive, highly complicated live event.
Oh, that's an interesting way to look at it.
Well, think about it. The direct works are essentially your catering budget.
I see where you're going.
You would never just hand a catering company $1 million and say, hey, just feed whoever shows up.
Right, that would be a disaster.
You agree on a price per plate, and then you pay for exactly how many plates your guests actually consume. If your guests eat more, you pay more.
Yeah, it is tied directly to physical consumption.
Exactly.
And that analogy actually holds up perfectly when we bring in the governing philosophies mentioned in the document.
All the acronyms.
Yes. The text explicitly notes that this schedule is prepared under the FIDC Red Book conditions of contract.
And for anyone who follows global infrastructure, SID is essentially the bedrock of international construction law.
It really is the gold standard.
Yeah.
The Red Book specifically designates a structure where the employer, so the client, handles the design, and the contractor executes it on a remeasurement basis.
Right. But how do they agree on what constitutes a measurement?
Well, to ensure everyone is speaking the exact same language, the document aligns with CESMM4,
which is the Civil Engineering Standard Method of Measurement.
Exactly, as well as POMI, the Principles of Measurement International.
Okay, this is where it really clicks for me. You need CESMM4 and POMI because let's say you're taking bids from a massive civil contractor in Dubai
Right.
and another one in London and maybe another one in Seoul.
They all have to be on the same page.
They all have to be measuring a cubic meter of excavation using the exact same mathematical assumptions.
Yes. Otherwise, the entire bidding process is just an illusion.
Right, you'd be comparing apples to oranges.
Exactly. Without those international standards, a contractor could artificially lower their overall bid just by using, a different definition of how topsoil is measured.
Oh, wow. So they could game the system.
Totally. But CESMM4 and POMI eliminate that. They mandate that the contractor estimates the quantities at the very beginning just to win the bid.
So they might project something like, hey, we think we'll need to move 50,000 cubic meters of dirt.
Right. But the crucial mechanism of remeasurement means they only get paid for the exact amount of dirt they actually end up moving.
So the initial quantities are really just estimates.
Yes. The final payout is based entirely on reality.
Which covers the catering side of my event analogy.
Right.
But, to throw this massive event, you also have to rent the venue. And you have to hire the DJ.
And pay for security.
Exactly. And those costs do not change based on how many appetizers get eaten.
No, they don't.
And that mirrors the second bucket in our document perfectly, the indirect costs.
Right. And the contract labels indirect costs as a lump sum.
A fixed amount.
Yes. These are the infrastructural requirements that make the direct works possible. But they aren't physical pieces of the final project that the client actually gets to keep.
Right. The client doesn't keep the temporary fencing.
No. And the document lists things like the mobilization and demobilization of personnel,
Getting people to the site and sending them home,
setting up the site offices, storage yards, temporary utilities.
which is huge.
It is implementing HSE health, safety, and environmental compliance, quality control, project management, setting out the survey benchmarks.
And for every single one of those items, the contractor just gets a fixed lump sum.
Correct. The document explicitly states under the method-related charges that these items are absolutely not to be remeasured.
Wow. So if the contractor ends up needing, say, 20 more management meetings than they originally planned,
Doesn't matter.
or if setting up the temporary power grid takes an extra month,
The payout does not change.
yeah, the employer is drawing a hard line in the sand there.
Very hard.
They are essentially saying, look, I will pay you down to the exact cubic meter for the dirt you move, but I'm not paying a single euro more for the air-conditioned office your managers sit in while they oversee the dirt moving.
Exactly. And it forces the contractor to be hyper-efficient with their overhead.
They have to be.
Because if your project management lags, you are bleeding your own profit margin, not the client's budget.
Which makes total sense. But once that baseline structure is established, the immediate question naturally becomes about risk.
Risk is the big one.
And reading the pricing basis portion of this contract was genuinely eye-opening for me.
It's intense, isn't it?
It's wild. I mean, we know mega projects always involve a heavy transfer of risk from the client to the contractor. That's just industry standards.
Sure.
But the absolutist language used in this specific document really takes it to another level.
Well, the defining characteristic of these rates is the explicit phrase they use. Fixed and not subject to any fluctuation.
Not subject to any fluctuation.
None. It locks the financial reality in place regardless of any macroeconomic shifts.
So even if the economy tanks,
Right. Exchange rates could collapse.
Yeah.
Local laws and regulations regarding source services could literally change overnight.
and the unit rate remains untouched.
Untouched.
So the rate that the contractor quotes has to bake in absolutely everything.
Everything. Labor, materials, transport, testing, overheads.
And what the contract calls a sufficient contingency provision.
Yeah. You better have a good contingency.
But the clause that really stopped me in my tracks was the one regarding the physical difficulty of the site itself.
Oh, the difficulty clause.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen to this, I'm quoting here. The rates and prices shall apply to all degrees of difficulty encountered during the performance of the works.
And it goes on to specify that this includes working around, over, under, or through existing roads, pipes, racks, cables, and equipment.
Just incredible.
It even covers the difficulty of working in and around existing installations while they're in full operation.
Okay, wait. Let's really think about what that means. That is a zero-tolerance policy for ambiguity.
Totally.
Think about the psychological pressure this puts on the estimating team during the bidding phase.
It's a mess.
Right. Let's say you are a contractor bidding on an earthworks package. You look at the survey. But you and I both know surveys are never 100% accurate.
Never. There's always something hiding down there.
Exactly. So you start excavating, expecting soft soil, but suddenly, boom, you hit a tangled nightmare of undocumented active cables.
Which happens all the time.
And now you have to carefully hand dig around live utilities, which takes, what, 10 times as long?
Easily. And requires specialized safety gear.
So, wait, under these rules, they can't charge more just because it's suddenly way harder.
Nope. Under standard conditions on other projects, a contractor might file a claim for differing site conditions.
Right, asking for more money or time.
But here, the employer has bought total financial certainty. You signed a contract saying your rate applies to, quote, all degrees of difficulty.
Wow. So if we connect this to the bigger picture, this forces a brutal game of economic brinksmanship.
Absolutely. It's a masterclass in risk transfer.
Because as a contractor, to protect yourself against that unknown underground cable, you have to pad your unit rate.
You have to. You have to price in the worst-case scenario for every single trench.
And here's the catch. If you pad your rate too much, you lose the bid.
Right. You lose it to a competitor who is willing to gamble that the soil is clean.
Man, you've really identified the core tension of mega project procurement there.
Yeah, the client wants to snuff out the ambiguity that leads to multi-million-dollar lawsuits later on.
Nobody wants a lawsuit.
But if they transfer too much risk, they end up paying massive premiums up front because all the bidders are terrified of the unknown.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And the document pushes this even further regarding quantities, too.
Oh, yeah. The quantity deviation clause.
It explicitly states that a deviation between estimated quantities and actual quantities shall not cause any changes to the unit rates.
Right.
Nor is it a valid ground for a variation or a claim.
Meaning the scale of your error doesn't protect you at all.
So if the bill of quantities estimated, say, 100 cubic meters of unsuitable material to be removed, and it turns out to actually be 10,000 cubic meters.
Your unit price remains exactly the same. You do not get to ask for a premium just because the scale of the headache increased exponentially.
That is ruthless.
It is.
There's also this fascinating clause about unapproved problem solving that I want to get your take on.
Oh, the free of charge clause.
Yes. Let's say a site manager realizes they need a highly specialized piece of equipment to safely remove those cables we talked about.
Right. They need a different tool.
And they just bring it on site to keep the project moving, prioritizing the schedule over the paperwork.
Which site managers love to do.
Exactly. But the contract states that any additional plant, materials, or personnel provided without prior written agreement are deemed to be supplied free of charge.
Yeah. That phrase, supplied free of charge, is deliberately designed to create immense internal friction within the contracting company itself.
Internal friction. How so?
Well, it pits the operations team, who just wants to get the physical job done and go home, against the commercial team.
Because the commercial team knows they won't get paid for unapproved tools.
Exactly. It forces rigid discipline. Nothing happens on the ground without commercial authorization.
So we have this regime where the baseline rules are incredibly strict, and the contractor owns all the risk of the difficulty.
Right.
But what happens when the client themselves actually wants to change the plan?
Yes.
Like, not an unexpected surprise in the soil, but a deliberate change in scope from the employer.
That brings us to Section 5, which is the rules for pricing for variations.
Because things always change.
Always. Now, when a formal variation is ordered, the first step is to see if the existing unit rates can just apply to the new work.
Makes sense. Keep using the same math.
But if the client orders a completely new type of work, the contract mandates an open book policy based on actual costs.
Which sounds dangerous. Like a blank check.
It could be. But to ensure it doesn't become a blank check, the document includes these exhaustive tables of pre-agreed hourly rates for almost every conceivable human role on a construction site.
And I have to say, reading through these lists of staff and trades, it is literally like looking at the end credits of a blockbuster movie.
It really is.
But for heavy industry, you see the massive administrative and intellectual overhead required.
Oh, the white-collar coordination is immense.
Yeah, there are interface managers whose entire job is just to prevent different contractors from crashing into each other's work zones.
Schedulers, planning managers, survey party chiefs.
And then the list just cascades all the way down through the skilled trades.
Carpenters, rebar workers.
Tinsmiths working sheet metal, scaffold builder helpers all the way down to a general helper for almost every distinct trade.
It's a beautiful snapshot of human specialization, honestly.
It really is. But here's where it gets really interesting to me. The real insight isn't just the list of jobs. It's the notes section governing how their time is valued.
Yes, the working hours.
Note number 1 dictates the definition of a regular workday, and it states, I'll quote it, "Regular hourly rates shall apply to the first 10 hours worked each day, Monday through Friday."
10 hours a day.
And Note 2 clarifies that overtime only kicks in for hours worked in excess of 10 hours a day or on weekends.
Which is a staggering baseline assumption when you really think about it.
It's nuts. I mean, we aren't talking about sitting at a desk for 50 hours a week.
No, not at all.
If you are an iron worker or a concrete finisher, tying rebar out in the blazing sun, a 10-hour day is a grueling physical toll.
It breaks people down.
The fact that this is the standard expectation before a single cent of overtime is authorized reveals something profound about the nature of these projects.
What's your takeaway from it?
They are operating in a state of accelerated velocity by default. Like it's a sprint from day one.
You're absolutely right. And if you want to understand why, you have to look at the cost of capital and the overhead burn rate.
The indirect costs we talked about.
Exactly. Mega projects are so expensive just to keep open. The security, the temporary power, that massive management staff we just listed.
Right.
Every single day the site is active costs an absolute fortune.
So time literally is money.
The financial math dictates that you have to squeeze absolute maximum productivity out of the labor force just to outpace the crushing weight of those indirect costs.
Wow. And, the commodification of time doesn't stop at the human workforce either.
No, it extends to everything.
Because the variations section also covers temporary facilities.
Right.
If a variation requires the contractor to bring in a new construction office unit or a warehouse or, temporary power generation, the pricing mechanism is fascinating.
Oh, the rental model.
Yeah. The contractor prices a lump sum just for the move-in and the move-out.
Which covers the logistics.
Right. But then the actual usage is charged at a flat rate per week.
It transforms the physical infrastructure into a metered service.
It is highly analogous to renting an Airbnb.
Hooray.
But instead of a vacation home, it's an industrial diesel generator.
That's a great way to put it.
Every week that variation drags on, the meter is just running. Time's dragged down to the hour for a tinsmith and the week for an office trailer.
Everything is quantified.
Okay, so we've mapped out the human labor, the specialized trades, and how their time is tightly governed.
Right.
But flesh and bone alone can't prepare a site of this magnitude.
Definitely not. You need iron.
The final piece of the pricing puzzle is the mechanical army required to execute the heavy lifting.
And this is where the scale gets truly massive.
The section covering variations rates for equipment gives us a window into the sheer scale of the engineering.
The machinery listed here reflects a project that is literally reshaping the Earth.
Yeah, tell me about some of this equipment.
Well, you have drag lines with bucket capacities up to 900 liters.
Huge.
A sprawling fleet of Caterpillar bulldozers, ranging from the smaller D4s all the way up to the massive earth-moving D8s.
I can just picture the D8s pushing mountains of dirt.
Exactly. You have road graders, centrifugal pumps, and then there's a cranes section that includes hydraulic and lattice boom cranes rated for over 150 tons.
Just picturing a 150-ton lattice boom crane gives you a sense of the logistical nightmare of just moving this equipment around.
Oh, getting it to the site is a project in itself.
Right. But just like the human workforce, it's the specific billing rules in the notes that reveal the underlying strategic logic here.
Always look at the notes.
And at first glance, the rules for equipment seem completely contradictory to me.
Well, this raises an important question, right? They do seem counterintuitive until you understand the incentive structure.
Okay, so let's look at note 1.
Go ahead.
It dictates that the hourly rates for the equipment are all in,
All caps, all in.
meaning the rate must cover every single item of expense. Fuel, lubricants, maintenance, repair, rental, insurance, and taxes.
Right, so the machine is treated as a fully independent economic unit.
Exactly. But then you hit note 2, which explicitly states, quote, "The rates shall be exclusive of time rates for drivers and/or operators," with exclamation points, essentially.
Right. So why would a contract go out of its way to unbundle the massive machine from the human required to operate it?
It's such a bizarre way to bill for a service.
It is.
Imagine needing a ride to the airport, and the taxi company charges you for the car's gas, insurance, and wear and tear on one receipt,
Uh-huh.
but then forces you to pay the driver's hourly wage on a totally separate, disconnected receipt.
It seems overly complicated.
But why introduce that administrative headache?
Well, the answer lies hidden in Note 3.
Okay, what does Note 3 say?
It says, employer shall not be charged for construction equipment downtime due to breakdown or maintenance.
Oh, that is incredibly clever.
Isn't it?
The contract unbundles the human from the machine to literally weaponize downtime against the contractor.
Precisely. By separating the operator's rate from the machine's rate, the financial architecture forces an extreme level of operational efficiency.
Let me trace the logic here just to make sure I have this right.
Go for it.
If I'm the contractor and my giant Caterpillar D8 bulldozer throws a track or blows a hydraulic line in the middle of a shift,
A common occurrence.
I instantly stop getting paid the lucrative hourly rate for the machine.
Instantly. Because the employer doesn't pay for breakdowns.
So I eat the cost of the idle bulldozer.
You lose the revenue stream of the asset immediately.
Because the heavy equipment operators billed entirely separately under the human trade section, they are still on my payroll.
Yep. They're still ticking away on the clock.
I still have to pay that operator their full hourly wage just to stand around in the dirt while the mechanics scramble to fix the bulldozer.
It is a deliberate double financial penalty.
Wow.
You lose the revenue of the machine, but you retain the overhead cost of the human.
Which hurts.
It hurts a lot. And think about it. If the rate was bundled, if you just paid one single price for bulldozer plus operator, the contractor might try to argue for partial payment during a breakdown.
Oh, like, hey, the guy is still here, pay us half.
Exactly. Or they might try to shift the operator to another task just to hide the inefficiency on the spreadsheets.
But this structure ruthlessly forces the contractor to maintain their fleet meticulously.
Yes.
You literally cannot afford to have a 150-ton crane sitting idle on a mega project because your logistics team skimped on a routine oil change.
Or a preventative inspection.
The financial penalty is so sharp that it dictates physical maintenance protocols on the ground.
It's a perfect encapsulation of what we've been uncovering today.
It really is.
I mean, a rule about breaking out a driver's wages on a spreadsheet secretly acts as this strict, unyielding enforcement mechanism for mechanical reliability.
it really pulls the entire journey together. I mean, we started this deep dive staring at a PDF titled Pricing Schedule Site Preparation.
A very unassuming title.
A document that looks like nothing more than endless tables of unit rates and contractual fine print.
But as we translated the clauses, we uncovered the psychological and financial blueprint that actually governs reality on the ground.
Right. We moved from the foundational logic of remeasuring topsoil down to the exact cubic meter,
To understanding the extreme brinksmanship of risk transfer.
where contractors must bid, assuming the absolute worst about what lies beneath the earth.
And then we looked at the sheer human toll.
The sprawling cast of characters, from interface managers to tinsmiths,
Yeah.
all operating under a baseline expectation of 50-hour weeks just to keep the crushing weight of the overhead at bay.
And finally, we saw how the billing mechanics of massive bulldozers and cranes are specifically engineered to punish inefficiency.
It serves as a really powerful reminder that the massive physical structures we see being built in our cities, they're actually the secondary product.
That's a great point.
Because the primary structure,
Yeah.
the immovable rules governing every action, every risk, and every minute of time that was entirely built in the contract long before the first shovel ever touched the earth.
Exactly. The math comes first. The concrete comes second.
So I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over on your own. The next time you walk past a sprawling construction site and you hear the roar of a diesel engine, or maybe you see a crew of iron workers high up tying rebar against the skyline, ask yourself, are you looking at a remeasurable direct cost in action or an indirect lump sum?
Yeah.
And if you notice a massive piece of yellow machinery just sitting in the mud, completely silent and idle, who exactly is paying for that silence? How does the invisible ink of a contract shape the physical world around us?
To download the free PDF file, please click the link in the video description. No email needed. Visit our web shop if you want to buy the Word template for your project.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and see next time.